So today I have decided to discuss a very unique topic, that that communication. So communication is the topic which we have decided to discuss with you on in the subject of the entrepreneurship development and business skills. So let us have what are the objectives of these topics, that understand the meaning and concept of communication and understanding the process of communication. These are the two things those who are will try to discuss thoroughly in this topic. So let us have a first go. The word communication, the word communicate is derived common to share, exchange, send, along, transmit, talk, gesture, write, put, it, use, relate. It's a Latin word actually. So that is the communication establishes relationship and makes organizing possible. Every message has a purpose or objective. The sender intend, whether the consciously or unconsciously, to accomplish this something by communicating. In organizational context, messages typically have a definite objective: to motivate, to inform, to teach, to persuade, to entertain, to inspire. This definite purpose is in fact one of the principal difference between the casual conversation and managerial communication. Yes, that is that the purpose is very clear. In general conversation, we are not that much of that attentive in the voice or in the message which was communicated. But in the managerial communication, that everything is so precisely, and the intent is very clear, that the whatever is communicated in the form of the message to be decoded and decoded by the receivers with same spirit and the consents. So that kind of that to teach, to persuade, to tempt, to inspire, this definite purpose is in fact one of the principal difference between the casual conversation and managerial conversation. Effective communication in the organization centers on well-defined objectives to support the organizational goal and mission. That is why communication is very important, because to effective communication in the organization centers, it's a center of attraction that on well-defined objectives and support to organizational goals and objectives. Those who want to, because the message is very clear that we are communicating down the line, that what are the goal and what are the objectives. So if the effective communication is there, then we'll have a very good opportunity to achieve those or goal and objectives and the vision and mission of the organization. So communication is the process by which a message or information is exchanged from a sender to a receiver. Communication is a process by which a message or a information is exchanged in between sender to a receiver. For example, a production manager send may send a message to sales manager receiver asking for sales forecast for next 6 months, so they can plan production level. The sales manager would then reply feedback to the production manager with the appropriate figures. So that kind of that message, that it's a message in between the production manager and the sales manager, that he had required to plan the production of a particular commodity or product for next incoming 6 months. So let us have a forecasting sales plan from the sales people, and then he'll have a. So this message is very clear, and the sales manager has given the forecast of for a product for next coming 6 months. So that is why that this is a communication. Communication is a process by which a message or information is exchanged from a sender to a receiver. So this is the communication. Now that let us have a few different definitions, that communication is the sum of all things. Sum of all things. Communication is the sum of all things one person does when he wants to create understanding in the mind of another. It involves the systematic, continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. It's involved a systematic and a continuous process of telling and listening and understanding. Louis Allen has given this definition that communication is sum of all things one person does when he wants to create understanding in the mind of another. That it means listening, telling, listening, and understanding. Communication can be defined as the process through which two or more persons come to exchange ideas and understanding among themselves. It means they have the exchange of ideas and with the same understanding and with the same understanding among themselves. So that art at whom we can call the communication, or we can define the communication as a process through which two or more person come to exchange ideas and thoughts, and have a common understanding among themselves. Ultimately, they achieve the level of common understanding. So, communication is a process of transmitting and receiving verbal and non-verbal messages that produce a response. The communication is considered effective when it achieves the desired reaction or response from receiver. Simply stated, communication is two-way process of exchanges idea or information or thoughts between human beings. That the self presentation relation goal, and the instrumental goal. So self presentation goal, who are and how we want to be perceived, that is the who we are and how we want to perceive, that the self presentation goal. Then relation goal, how we develop, maintain, and terminate relationship, that the relationship goal. Instrumental goal, how we manipulate others, that the instrument, that what kind of that instrument we are using. So that these are the important things, those who are very important as far as the communication is concerned. Now the process of communication is very good, and that to be understood over here, that the process are sender, transmission, noise, receiver, and feedback. These in this way the entire that communication process, we know that the sender developing an idea, encoding the message, and then transmission the message, and that in between we have a noises. In between we have a mass, we now encoding and decoding, that is very important. Reception of the message, decoding the message, acceptance, rejection of the message, using the information, that to be at the end of the receiver. Now the feedback, giving feedback again to the, and in between we have a noises. You know that the noises are nothing, they are just the hurdles and barriers, those who are not allowing the message to be reached in the same, with the same spirit and manner, that to be encoded by the sender. So that these are the noises sometimes, and to whom we are calling the noises. So this is the process of that communication. Now seek to clarity your idea with other. First you have to have that much clarity in yourself. If you have that clarity, then you start speaking. Otherwise, you if you have confusion at your level, then you further you are spreading confusion down the line. So let's have a seek clarity in your idea before you speak. It means that everything, you have to have a clarity, that what kind of that message you want to spread in the team. Examine the true purpose of each communication. Yes, this is very important, that examine first that it's a true process, true purpose of each communication. If you are spreading the false and the gimmicks and untruthful that situation, and the message, that is not that is affecting the effectiveness of the communication. Consider the total physical and human setting whenever you communicate. Yes, this is also that is very much important, that human aspects when we are communicating, that whether they are in this position to accept the message or not, that to be very much understood before communicating the message. Consult with others where appropriate in planning your communication. Yes, it is also very much important that you take the opinion of the experts. If you are passing such a communication which required that kind of competency which you are not having, so such type of message if you are passing towards because of that responsibility you are having at your hand, so you have to consult this thing with the experts of that the content of that message which you have decided to pass on to the receivers, those who are the part of that game. So consult with others where appropriate in planning or in communication. That is very important. These are the basic that those who improve the effectiveness of the communication. Be mindful while you communicate of overtones as well as the basic content of your message. That meaningful is very much important. Mindful is also very much important, and the body language is also very much important. While you are communicating, you have to have that kind of eyeball to eyeball and tone and voice modulation and all these kind of that the noises you avoid such type of that communication in the communication in between the communication, they are very important. So these are the basics of effective communication. Seek to clarity that idea before see, examine the true purpose of each communication, consider the total physical and human setting whenever you communicate, consult with other where appropriate in planning of your communication, be mindful while you communicate of the overturn as well as the basic context of your message. So these are few important things, those who are very important. Now the basic form of communications, the form of communication can be broadly divided into two parts: non-verbal communication or sometimes the verbal communication. Verbal communication is generally of two types: the written communication and the spoken communication. But here in the non-verbal you have kinesics, then the processing, then the parallel language time, then the time language. So these kind of that the non-verbal communication, we'll discuss them one by one, and they are also very much important, that how we will communicate that others. So that is very important, that how we can have. So let us have a verbal communication first. We communicate most of our idea to others through verbal communication. That is very important. That in example through spoken written message. However, verbal message have some drawbacks. The message may not be properly worded, or message may be misunderstood or interpreted differently from its intended meaning. So that is the drawback of the verbal communication. But if it is written, then then there is no confusion as far as the communication is concerned. So if written communication is there, then there is no problem. If that is there, then So once again, I have given the recap on that the forms of communication. Now let us have a discussion on verbal communication. That the verbal communication is nothing. It is just the situation while we communicate. We communicate through words or through the in writing. So that too be verbal communication, but there is a message may not be properly worded or a message may be misunderstood. So that is that the drawback of the verbal communication. Then non-verbal communication can be defined as a communication done without speaking or writing. Let us know take a at some of the characteristics which distinguish verbal communication. Distinguished form or the kinetics, that this is the most often studied and important area of non-verbal communication and refers to body movement of any kind. Different body movement can express inner status of emotion. Facial expression can convey feelings of surprise, happiness, anger, sadness. If you meet a long lost friend, say, I am very happy to meet you again. But with the sad facial expression, it conveys that the exact opposite meaning. So that kind of that here there is no that written anything or verbal communicated, but it's a through body language, through expression that the kinesics to whom we are calling, and we are communicating that this is the situation. Then the proxemics, proxemics is derived from the word proximity or closeness, and the communication term to personal space and distance. The space and distance which we choose to keep from people is also part of non-verbal communication. Each of us have our own inner and outer cycle, which differs from different people. So on the basis of that, the whatever the message to be given to whom we are calling the proxemics. Then the time language. This refers to the meaning of importance attached to time and varies between different people. One person may value time more than another. Similarly, the time language also varies across the cultures. In most Western cultures, so for example, punctuality is considered to be the important. Arriving late for a business meeting inexcusable. In other culture, it is more relaxed and time not given that much of importance. So that is also the importance that the message to be given. Then the para language also. Para means like or similar to. Therefore, the para language means like language. Of all the forms of non-verbal communication, para language is closest to the verbal communication. It refers to the tone of voice which is which is said. In another word, it is how something is said and not what is to said. So that is kind of situation is there. So to whom we are calling the para language. Communication, para means other. So that kind of that thing is there. Then communication channel. These are also very important that in organization information flows forward, backward and sideways. This information flow is referred to as a communication. Communication channel refer to the way this information flows within the organization and with other organization. So communication channel, they are to be divided formal, informal and official. So these kind of that is we'll discuss time and again, and that will know that what kind of that thing. So now I'll discuss the communication channel that to be divided in formal, informal, unofficial. So we'll discuss one by one that what is that. For formal communication channel, a formal communication channel transmit information such as goal, policies, procedure of an organization. Messages in this type of communication channel follow a chain of command. This means information flow from manager to his subordinate, and they in turn passes on information to the next level of the next level of the next level of the uh, next level of the information where it is required to the staff. So that is that in the ladder actually in the ladder we will see that the formal communication channel transmit information such as goal, policies and procedure of an organization. Messages in this type of communication channel follow a chain of command. It means from in a ladder actually from top to bottom the messages passes through like that. So here this means the information flow from manager to his subordinate, and they in turn pass the information to the next level of the staff. So this is kind of that whom we are calling the formal communication channel. An example of a formal communication channel is company's newsletter, which gives the employees as well as the clients a clear idea of the company goal and vision. It also includes the transfer of information with regards to memorandum, reports, and the direction and schedule meeting in chain of command. That is a formal channel of communication. A business plan, customer satisfaction survey, annual report, employers manual, review meetings, all are the formal that communication. The letter writing in between the managers, all they're under the protocol that is to be called as a formal communication channel, and this is very important for any organization that they have to run the show with the formal channel. So first one we have discussed that out of these three formal channel, and we have discussed them in thoroughly. Now the informal communication channel. Within a formal working environment, there always exists an informal communication network. Strict in partial that web of communication cannot function efficiently to its own hand. There exists a communication channel outside of this web. While this type of communication channel disrupt the chain of command, a good manager needs to find the fine balance between the formal and informal communication channel. So then there should be have a demarcation in between the formal and informal. Informal means there is no actually the protocol. There is nothing like that that to be in general conversation, that kind of that communication channel in sometimes the parties or like that, that the strict hierarchy where the communication cannot function efficiently on its own. Hence there exists a communication channel outside of web. While this type of communication channel may disrupt the chain of command, a good manager needs to find the fine balance between the formal and informal communication channel. An example of informal communication channel is the lunch time or a party time or a tea time at the organization's cafeteria, canteen. Here in relaxed and atmosphere that the discussion among employees are encouraged. Also, manager walking around the adopting a hand-on approach to handling employee. Here is an example of an informal communication channel. Quality circle teamwork, a different training program are outside of the chain of the command and so far under the category of the informal communication channel. So these are very important that other than the protocol, whatever we are doing to impart the information or to have a feedback, to receive the feedback from the employee. So for that we require the informal channel. So let's have first once again the look on the formal channel. A formal communication channel transmission such as goal, policies, voices of messages in the type of that communication channel follow chain of command. This means information flow from a manager to his subordinate, and they are in turn to pass on to further. So now the informal and formal, we know that what is the difference. Formal means everything is in structure, and here informal means nothing is structured. Whatever the communication we have done in the structured form, to whom we are calling the formal communication, and whatever the communication we do in the informal manner, either in the lunch, tea breaks or like that, walking or sometimes like that kind of communication is being known as a informal communication. So now we know that the process that is very clear, that sender, transmission, noise, receiver, and feedback, and that is to be we have reached to this, the communication formal and informal, and then there is the third one which is also equally important, that unofficial communication channel. Good manager will recognize the fact that sometimes communication that takes place within the organization in interpersonal. While minutes of a meeting may be the topic of this employees, sport, politics, and TV shows. They share the unofficial that communication channel is an organization in organization's grapevine. It is grapevine that the rumors circulate. Also, those engaging the grapevine discussions of open forum, which translate into friends and outside the organization. While the grapevine may have a positive implication more than that, not information circulating grapevine is engaged, exaggerated, and may cause unnecessary alarm to employees. A good manager should be privy to information circulating in the unofficial communication channel and should take positive measures to prevent the flow of false information. An example of is gathering among employees. That social gathering among employees. Sometimes the unofficial, that untoward the information to be passed, that is to be the gossips and all. Sometimes the negative impact of this kind of the communication. So important the intelligent manager is that he'll not allow such type of, and he'll keep close watch on that kind of activities done by the officials in an official manner. So that's informal communication, then the formal, and then the unofficial communication we have discussed. So now I once again I'll go that the pattern of the communication, that how we have that the communication channels, that formal, informal, and unofficial. So these three we have discussed in detail, and I hope that with the So once again, the formal communication channel, and then the informal communication channel, and then the unofficial communication channel. These three all we have communicated, we have discussed. Now the once again I will go to the objectives that understood the meaning, and now I think now we have completed the understanding meaning that communication is a process by which a message or information is exchanged from a sender to a receiver. For example, production manager, that example we have already discussed, that for next 6 months how much the production is required for selling, for doing the business. So that kind of that communication is very clear, which was given by production manager to sales manager, and sales manager has given certain figures that this is the quantity which is required, and these are the product pack which is required for next incoming month wise year given. So through that the communication is very clear, and the same thing will be understood by the sales manager and given the reply in the same manner that to be required. And then the communication is the sum of all things one person does when he want to create understanding in the mind of another. So that is also very important. It involves systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. It means Louis Allen has clearly mentioned that communication is the sum of all things one person does when he want to create an understanding in the common understanding in the mind of the another. So that is also very important. So communication is a process can be defined through which two or more persons come to exchange ideas, thought, and common understanding among themselves. So that is also very important. And then that is why we know that the communication is very important. And then there are the three that the basic, that the self presentation, relation goal, and the instrumental goal. These are all are the between the human being, that exchange idea is there. So these all are very important things. And then we have a process of that communication, that the idea sender that to be generated, then develop that encodes and message in the form of the message. Then it was sent to the signal transmission, and then decoded by the recipients, and then the meaning and understanding by the receiver. So this is the process actually we have once again we have explained this in the transmission, that sender, transmission, noise, and receivers and feedback. And here the noise is very important, that the noise is nothing, it is just the barrier and the hurdles and the obstacles those who are in between arises because of so many reasons, that sometimes the voice, sometimes the light, sometimes the audio visual problem, if you are through the audio visual aid, that all kind of the hurdle to whom we are calling the in during the transmission of the message, to whom we are calling the noise. And these noise is both ways, that while giving feedback sometimes they are also be there. So this is very important, that entire process is to be under the clear cut and situation where we don't have the noises. So that is to be very important, either this sender or the receiver. Both the end we have to ensure that the clarity of the message to be reached, and for that we have to avoid the situation of noises, those who are being created and sometimes natural, sometimes due to the certain circumstances. So we have to avoid this thing. Then we know that the basics of effective communication, that the clarity should be there, that when we speak or when we that you have to have a very good there is no confusion as far as what to communicate. Examine the true purpose of that each communication. That is also very important. That you have to know that what is the purpose, and the true purpose is that why we are passing that message to down the line. Consider the total physical and human setting whenever you communicate. That is also that the state of that the physical and mental state of the human to be very important. That when we are communicating, in what state they are there. So that is to be very important for the effective communication. Consult with others if you were appropriate in planning your communication and drafting your communication in the form of the message. That is also very important, that if you are not the expert of the content which you want to communicate down the line, then in that case you have to incorporate the opinion of the experts, and then you plan your message and summarize and specified your message in a form like that now it is to be communicated to the down the line. Be mindful while you communicate of your terms as well as the basic content of your message. That to be very much important. That be mindful while you communicate. You have to focus that you are in the same line and same manner. That body language to be like that. So these all are the important things that those who are directly having impact on the effectiveness of the communication. So all these five things we have to keep in our mind while we are communicating, while we are dealing with the people, those who are in the system. So these are the basic things, and then we have a discussion on that what kind of that communication further to be divided into non-verbal and verbal communication. In non-verbal communication is very clear that written or sometimes the spoken, that is very important. But in the case of the that kind of situation, how we have to deal with the communication. So that is also very important. And thank you very much for participating in this lecture. I am very much thankful. And now I'm closing the class. So if you have any query, you please ask in the chat box. Thank you very much.